It's just after sunrise, February 14, 1943. The air is razor cold, the kind that slices straight through wool overcoats. American soldiers of the 1st Armored Division stumble backward through the scrub and sand, faces blackened with dust and shock. Behind them, burning Shermans light the horizon like giant funeral pyres. Sergeant Mike Ross from Pittsburgh clutches a frost-bitten hand around his Thompson, eyes wide. 24 hours earlier, these same GIs were laughing, joking that the Germans were finished. Now, the laughter is gone. Panzers of the 10th and 21st Panzer Divisions have just torn through their lines like paper. Mark IVs and even a handful of the dreaded Tigers roll forward, guns barking, tracks chewing up the desert floor. Up on the ridge, a young lieutenant named Joe Blackwell watches his platoon evaporate. He screams into the radio, "Where the hell is our artillery?" Then a voice crackles back, calm, almost amused, with a thick French accent. "Do not worry, mon ami. We are coming." Blackwell spits dust. French artillery? The same French army that folded in 6 weeks back in 1940? He looks at the scared kid next to him, Private Kowalski, and mutters, "We're screwed." In the distance, half-tracks and battered trucks appear, kicking up clouds of red sand. On the trucks, ancient guns with long, slender barrels that look like they belong in a museum. American crews burst out laughing when they see them. "That's it?" someone shouts. "We're saved by pop guns from the last war?" They're staring at the French 75mm Model 1897, a gun older than most of the men fighting. The same cannon that saved Paris in 1914. The same cannon the Germans captured in 1940 and then left rusting in depots across North Africa when they decided it was obsolete. The first shell leaves the barrel with a crack so sharp it feels like the sky itself is splitting. Not a boom, a crack, like God snapping a colossal whip. 30 rounds a minute. That's 1 shell every 2 seconds. American officers who've spent months listening to their own 105s lumber along at 4, maybe 5 rounds a minute if the crew's good, suddenly forget how to breathe. The gun captain is a wiry Frenchman with a face carved out of old leather. Commandant Philippe de Hautecloc's artillery liaison, Capitaine Jean-Marie Delattre. No relation to the general, but just as insane. He stands on the trail of his 75 like it's a surfboard, one hand on the panoramic sight, the other waving a Gauloise cigarette like a conductor's baton. "Feu à volonté!" he roars, voice calm, almost bored. The crew moves like dancers who've done this drunk, blindfolded, in their sleep. One man yanks the lanyard. Recoil slams the barrel back. The spade digs into the sand. The hydraulic buffer hisses. Before the empty casing hits the ground, another loader has already rammed the next round. No pause, no fumbling. The breech block snaps shut with a metallic cough, and the gun screams again. A German Mark IV 800 yards out takes a direct hit on the turret ring. The Panzer slews sideways, hatches pop, crew bail out on fire. Another shell is already chasing them across the sand. American Lieutenant Joe Blackwell stands frozen, mouth open. He turns to the GI next to him. What the hell did we just watch? What they're watching is the greatest field gun ever built. Designed in 1897, hydro-pneumatic recoil system, revolutionary then, still unmatched by anything the Wehrmacht fields in 1943. The barrel comes back, absorbs the shock, and returns to battery so fast the wheels barely move. The gun stays on target. No relaying between shots, just pure, murderous rhythm. The Germans realize something is wrong when their lead company starts disappearing in orange fireballs faster than their radios can scream warnings. A Tiger I, The invincible 56-ton monster trundles forward to deal with the nuisance. The French gunners don't even look scared. They simply adjust the range drum, elevate a fraction, and keep firing. One 75mm shell isn't going to kill a Tiger from the front, but 30 in 60 seconds? The Tiger's optics shatter. The commander's cupola is torn away. Tracks snap like breadsticks under the hammer blows. The beast grinds to a halt, blinded and bleeding smoke. On the ridge, Capitaine de Lattre finally takes a drag of his cigarette, exhales toward the burning German column, and mutters in perfect Parisian sarcasm. Monsieur Les Boches asked for rapid fire. We are accommodating. Blackwell grabs a French sergeant by the sleeve. How? How do you load that fast? The sergeant grins, missing 2 front teeth. Monsieur, this gun was making love to Paris when your grandfather was still in short pants. We know her moods. And in that moment, every American on the ridge feels the same chill. They aren't just fighting with the French. They're fighting with ghosts, furious, cigarette-smoking ghosts who refuse to lose twice. The Panzers begin to reverse. Kasserine Pass, February 22, 1943. The afternoon, the desert caught fire. The sun hangs like a white-hot coin above the ridges. You can smell the cordite before you hear the guns again. Rommel has decided the Americans are broken. He throws the full weight of Kampfgruppe DAK, the elite of the Afrika Korps, straight down the Kasserine Pass road. 48 Panzers, Tigers in the lead, followed by waves of Mark IIIs and half-tracks full of grenadiers who still believe they are the masters of this desert. American forward observers watch the Steel River coming and feel their stomachs drop. The 19th Combat Engineers are already wiring bridges to blow. Retreat is the only word anyone can say. Then the French 75s open up again. This time, there are 32 of them, unlimbered in a shallow wadi the Germans never spotted. Commandant Arnaud Touzé du Vigier, a thin, aristocratic colonel with a monocle and 0 patience, stands on a rock like he's conducting an orchestra of death. Section de tir, 3 coups par minute sur les chars lourds. Le reste, feu rapide sur l'infanterie. The first Tiger is 2,200 yards out when the barrage lands. Imagine this. 32 guns firing as one, then instantly splitting into 2 rhythms. 8 guns hammer the Tigers with deliberate, aimed shots, high explosive shells screaming in flat trajectories, striking glassy plates, shattering road wheels, turning 56 tons of Krupp steel into burning coffins. The other 24 guns elevate and switch to shrapnel fused for airburst above the following infantry. The sky over the pass fills with black puffs and glittering steel rain. German soldiers who were jogging forward confidently are suddenly running in blind circles, screaming, hands pressed to shredded faces. A single 75 served by Sous-Lieutenant René Vallet fires 31 rounds in 58 seconds, a record the crew will brag about for the rest of their lives. The empty brass piles so high it spills over the shield and rolls under the wheels like golden gravel. American Captain Fred Walker, watching through binoculars from a knocked-out half-track, actually starts laughing, a high, hysterical sound. "My God," he keeps saying. "My God, they're chewing them to pieces." The lead Tiger brews up with a detonation that shakes the ground hard enough to rattle teeth. The turret lifts 10 feet in the air before crashing back upside down. The entire German column stalls. Drivers throw their tanks into reverse, tracks spinning, trying to back away from whatever invisible demon is killing them. Rommel himself is in a command half-track 3 miles back. His chief of staff hands him the radio message, face pale. "Herr General, the Amis have some kind of automatic cannon. Rate of fire impossible. We are losing a tank every 12 seconds. Rommel snatches the binoculars, stares at the distant flicker of muzzle flashes, and for the first time in North Africa, you can see doubt cross the desert fox's face. On the ridge, a French gunner with blood pouring from a shrapnel slice in his cheek turns to the stunned Americans and yells over the roar. "You see now, mes amis? This little lady, she never retired. She was only resting." The Panzers are no longer advancing. They are dying. And somewhere in the smoke and the thunder, the United States Army learns a lesson it will never forget. Sometimes the oldest weapon in the arsenal is the deadliest one on the field. The pass is holding. But the real bloodbath is just beginning.
The moment the tide turns. February 23, 1943, 4:17 p.m., Speba Ridge. The desert wind shifts. It carries the smell of burning rubber, diesel, and something sweeter, fear. German radio traffic is unraveling. You can almost hear it through the static. Young lieutenants screaming for orders that never come. Oberstleutnant Heinrich Hermann von Hulsen, commanding the 10th Panzer's assault group, stands in the cupola of his command Panzer III, face gray. In the last 45 minutes, he has lost 19 tanks. 19. Not to American tanks, not to aircraft, to French museum pieces that shouldn't even scratch his paint. On the American side of the line, something electric is happening. Sergeant Mike Ross, the same Pittsburgh kid who was retreating at dawn, is now running forward with a crate of 75mm shells on his shoulder like it's Christmas morning. GIs who hours ago were calling the French guns pea shooters are now forming human chains, hauling ammunition from shot-up deuces, begging the French crews to let them help load. A French sergeant with a handlebar mustache and a bloody bandage around his head looks at the Americans swarming his gun pit, grins, and shouts, "Bien! You want to dance with the 75? Then load like your life depends on it, because it does." The rate of fire climbs higher. 30 rounds a minute becomes 35 when the Americans start feeding shells 2 at a time. Brass cartridges pile so deep the gunners are standing ankle-deep in gold. Rommel makes his last throw. He personally orders the 501st Heavy Tank Battalion, the brand-new Tiger Company, forward one final time. 6 Tigers, spaced 100 yards apart, begin lumbering up the pass like moving fortresses. German infantry cheer from their half-tracks. This will break the line. The French gunners see them coming. Colonel Touzé Duvigier lowers his binoculars, lights a fresh cigarette off the burning stub of the last one, and speaks so softly the nearest gunner has to lean in. "Mes enfants, today we remind the world why France invented artillery." Every 75 in the battery elevates in perfect unison. Range, 3,100 yards. Fuse setting, delay. Target, tracks and belly armor. The first salvo is 28 guns firing within the same heartbeat. The desert erupts. Shells fall in a perfect ladder. The lead Tiger disappears inside a wall of orange fire and sand. When the smoke clears, its right track is gone, belly exposed like a gutted whale. Another Tiger slews sideways, turret jammed forever. A third simply stops, hatches open, crew bailing out and running, away from their invincible tank. The German infantry behind them see this and do something no one in the Afrika Korps has done since 1940. They break. Half-tracks reverse into each other. Men leap out and sprint for the rear. An entire company throws down rifles and raises their hands while still a mile from American lines. Von Hulsen watches his assault collapse through smoke and tears of rage. He keys the microphone one last time. "All units, disengage. Repeat, disengage." On the ridge, the French 75s keep firing until the barrels glow cherry red and the crews have to piss on the recoil buffers to cool them. When the last shell is gone, silence falls so complete you can hear a spent casing tinkle on stone. An American private, 19 years old, from Iowa, voice cracking, turns to the French gunner beside him and says the only thing that feels big enough. "You just saved the United States Army with a gun older than my dad." The Frenchman wipes soot from his face, offers the kid a drag from his last Gauloise, and answers, "Non, mon gars. We just reminded the world that some things never get old." Far below, the road through Kasserine Pass is littered with burning steel and white flags. The German offensive in North Africa is over, and somewhere in the smoke, the M1897 75mm, the gun that fired the first shot of World War I, and now the shot that ended Rommel's dream, finally lowers its barrel.
The little gun that refused to die. Years later, long after the sand of Tunisia has been washed from their boots, the men who were there still talk about it in the same hushed tone. In the official U.S. Army history of the North African campaign, the French 75s at Kasserine get exactly 11 lines. 11 lines for the afternoon that saved an entire corps from annihilation. But the soldiers remember. Mike Ross from Pittsburgh keeps a single brass 75mm casing on his mantle back home. When his grandkids ask what it is, he just says, "That's the sound freedom made when it decided not to lose." Colonel Touzé du Vigier is promoted, decorated, and quietly reassigned. The Free French High Command never quite knows what to do with an officer who still fights wars like it's 1914 and wins. He dies in 1968, still insisting the Model 1897 was the most beautiful thing France ever gave the world. At his funeral, 6 old gunners fire one last blank salute with a restored 75 pulled from a museum. The recoil still works perfectly. The guns themselves? Most are scrapped after the war. Progress, they call it. A few end up on village squares in Normandy and Provence, barrels pointed forever at the sky, plaques reading simply, "Ils ne passeront pas." They shall not pass. But one battery, the actual battery from Kasserine, is saved by a group of American veterans who refuse to let it happen. They ship 4 of the guns home, restore them, and every February 22nd, they gather at a VFW hall in Ohio. They wheel the guns out, load blanks, and fire 30 rounds a minute, just like old times. The neighbors complain about the noise. The veterans just smile and say, "You weren't there." And somewhere, in the thunder of those ancient barrels, you can still hear Capitaine de Latre's voice on the wind, cigarette glowing in the dark. This little lady, she never retired. She was only resting. Fade to black. The American GIs who laughed at the tiny French 75mm gun that February morning learned a truth every soldier eventually discovers. Some weapons aren't made of steel. They're made of memory, of pride, of a nation that was told it was finished and answered with fire. And on the days when the world feels too heavy, when the new tanks and the new wars seem unstoppable, it's worth remembering a desert ridge in 1943, where 32 old guns, crewed by men who had already lost everything once, decided the story wasn't over. They loaded, they aimed, they fired, and the desert itself held its breath, until the Panzers turned and ran.